show brought to you by GetSue.com. I'm your host, Brock Wagner, and I'll be bringing you conversations with culinary entrepreneurs and the digital marketing pros who support them with tools, tech, and strategies for building smarter, more resilient culinary businesses. This podcast, we're built for chefs. Hey, we are here with Brian Kirkland. Brian, I've been looking forward to having a conversation with you. I think that this is going to be really great. I want to just first quickly introduce you, but there's so much more to what you are doing that I think you're going to have to dive into this with us and explain some of these things for the audience, just because it seems like you're involved in a few different things that are all super awesome and super pertinent to anybody in a culinary venture. But when you came out of the podcast, as I know it, you are the head of partnership development at ActiveMenus, which I'd love to talk about. But beyond that, you have you've been involved in Deliver Logic. I just want to get this whole thing kind of like figured out a bit. So tell me a little bit about Deliver Logic, your companies that you founded, ActiveMenus, and we'll just get right into it.
Sure, Brock. Thanks for having me on. Deliver Logic is a company that supports online delivery businesses similar to DoorDash, but typically locally owned. The company right now supports about 150 local independent delivery services across the United States and abroad. And I got started with them as a restaurant delivery service using their software to provide a marketplace to my local area to where people could order, just like DoorDash, order from different restaurants and have it delivered. At our peak, we were doing about 300 orders a day, and we had over 200 drivers that worked for us.
Wow, that is quite a number. So this is all around food delivery, and that is Deliver Logic. Okay, and then I also see that you're here, the founder of Orders Up. Tell me a little bit about Orders Up and how that plays into this.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess to start with, I'll tell you a little bit about ActiveMenus. ActiveMenus started kind of around the time of the pandemic, selling online ordering directly to restaurants, and what they did was they wanted to provide a way for restaurants to have their own online ordering so that they weren't beholden to these delivery services paying 20-30% commission. They wanted to have their own online ordering for a flat rate. I came on to ActiveMenus about a year ago and started building out a partnership program where we partnered with local marketing agencies that already have restaurant clients to work with them to offer online ordering to their restaurants. So where Orders Up came in was I was already doing this, on the partnership side, building this partnership program. And I said, well, if I'm going to build out this partnership program, I probably ought to be a partner myself. So I started Orders Up as a reseller, white label reseller of ActiveMenus to offer that online ordering and some other services, at local SEO, stuff like that, to local restaurants.
Oh, okay. Now I'm getting it. So that's a clearer picture. And so Orders Up is that marketing agency, and that's interesting. So you're able to white label ActiveMenus, and I mean, tell me a little bit about your experience with ActiveMenus and the impact that it's having within the culinary space for these local restaurants. Like, what are some of the things that you guys are seeing in terms of these restaurants using ActiveMenus? Both in their experience with it and also just with maybe some outcomes that they're having.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be hugely beneficial for restaurants. And one of the major reasons why is because ActiveMenus has a dispatch and support center located in Tampa, Florida, where we actually make sure that the order goes correctly, it gets delivered on time and accurately. What happens a lot of times with restaurants, they'll set up online ordering through maybe their point of sale provider, let's say. And so the customer can go in there and order takeout, and that typically goes fine. But if the customer orders delivery, what the online ordering software provider will do is they'll send that order to a DoorDash driver through a program called DoorDash Drive, which we use too. But once they send that order to the DoorDash driver, that online ordering software is hands off at that point. They throw their hands up in the air and they say, we did our part, we sent the order to a driver, we're done with that order. What inevitably happens with delivery orders is a million things can go wrong. the driver might not be able to find the restaurant. The driver might not be able to find the customer. The driver can get a flat tire. The driver can cancel the order for any reason. When that happens, the restaurant is saddled with the responsibility to deliver customer service to that customer. The customer calls the restaurant and say, hey, I ordered delivery on your website. I don't have my food. What's going on? The restaurant has no visibility into what's happening with that order. So they cannot answer those questions for that customer 99% of the time. And so what the restaurant has to do is they have to contact their online ordering provider, who has to contact DoorDash, who has to then provide another driver. And then they're charged twice, once for the first driver that never showed up, once for the second. Now they can get a refund for that first driver, but there's a process they have to go through. So this is a lot of headache for these restaurants, right? So what do? They take the online, the order takeout button and leave it to go to their online ordering provider. But they put an order delivery button on their website as well, and that order delivery button goes to DoorDash, where even though they're producing the order, the restaurant's producing the order, they're paying DoorDash that 20 to 30% commission, so they don't have to deal with the headache of the customer service part of that. Whereas we can come in and we can charge the restaurant a small flat fee, typically it's less than $2 an order, to handle all of that for them.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I'd never even thought of that myself. Just the fact that, yeah, customers don't really feel that pain unless they're involved in that portion where the delivery driver fails to show up, right? And then the restaurant gets involved in that. And I imagine that, maybe it's not, a huge percentage that's happening, but when it does happen, that's a huge pain.
Yeah,
That's
it might
like
be 1 in 100, Brock, but the thing is, like, if you're a restaurant owner and, you're in the back trying to cook food and you're trying to make sure customers are happy up front and the phone's ringing and now you have this delivery order that's going haywire, it's in that moment, it's a very,
right.
very big deal.
Right. Yeah. Super painful. And then it just kind of disrupts everything in that moment. And that can cause, other issues down the line, of course. So you guys are solving a really important issue that some people don't really have the priviness of like seeing behind the scenes. It brings up kind of a question for me that I'm just curious of what your opinion or viewpoint is of this. But where do you see the future of these order delivery apps going? Because you guys are solving something that seems like they should be solving for that, but they're not even paying attention. And it seems like a pretty big deal to me. So do you think that these apps like DoorDash and Uber Eats and stuff, do you think they're going to survive for the long run, or do you think that there's something else on the horizon?
I think they'll survive. What that will look like is up to interpretation. As you probably know, Grubhub was just acquired again by a cloud kitchen company. I don't know exactly where that's going to go, but I would assume that they're going to be using, and these cloud kitchen companies, just for people who don't know, right? This is a facility, usually in a bigger city, where you can go open a restaurant for very little money, a few $100 a month, but you're not renting a restaurant, you're renting a kitchen within a facility that has multiple kitchens. So these facilities might have 10 to 20 kitchens, small areas with our commercial kitchens, and all delivery orders are sent to the front and they're aggregated in one place for delivery drivers to come pick up. So this is a very inexpensive way to get started in the restaurant business, right? So with that acquisition, I would assume that they're going to use those drivers mainly for their cloud kitchen concepts, because now they can control not only the production but also the distribution of that food. So that kind of vertical alignment within the culinary space, I think, is very interesting. I also think it's worth noting that the founder of Uber, Travis, he has purchased a cloud kitchen business, and so he's working on that now. And I have to think that there's something that's going to come down the line, some kind of partnership with Uber Eats. Of course, I don't know that, but I would assume something like that is coming there as well. So it's really interesting where this is going to go. I'm not sure exactly, but I can tell you it won't be in the iteration that we see them as now.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was actually going to mention Travis Kalanick because I know that he bought that cloud kitchen business, and I actually just watched the show Super Pumped recently, which is all about the kind of his rise and fall. right, within Uber. Super interesting. Of course, it's all filled with drama and things like that, but there is layers of truth in there, and based on real events and things. And so, yeah, I thought it was interesting that he got into that space. So I am curious to see where that goes, just simply because it's you know this, like having worked in this space, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. It's very specific in how culinary businesses operate, how they run, and honestly, the individuals who run them, right? Whether they're a chef or a business owner, there's just so much to consider there. And there's a lot of technology coming out that is meant to help the businesses. But in my perspective, in my viewpoint, I feel like we're trying to play catch up in the culinary space compared to some other industries. And that's why I love seeing what you're doing. I think it's a huge impact. I like what ActiveMenus is out there doing for these restaurant owners. Like, God knows that they need that help. Margins are thin. We talked about that a little bit. So in terms of playing that catch up in the culinary space, I'm curious as well what your experience has been as head of partnership development at ActiveMenus. What is the space looking like for more agencies, digital marketing experts, coaches, consultants? What is it looking like for those who are specifically serving this space, like the restaurants and the culinary businesses?
No doubt that restaurants, typically could use some help with their online presence in general, online ordering for sure. And it's a space, Brock, I go to all these conferences, right? I go to Food on Demand, National Restaurant Association, all these conferences every year. It's hard for me to keep up with everything, right? And I live and breathe this every hour of every day. So for sure, a restaurant owner has a ton on their plate, and this is one very small piece. And I think there can sometimes be a feeling for restaurant owners, to where they're always putting out fires. And if it's not a fire, if it's not something that's on fire right now, I don't need to worry about it, right? And so it's important, I think, especially for restaurant owners, to take a step back every once in a while, work on the business, not in the business. I've heard of blackout days where a restaurant owner will like rent a hotel room somewhere and it's just them in the hotel and they turn off their phone and don't even bring it with them and just spend that day just brainstorming and thinking about, how to do things better and more efficiently in their business. I think that's a great idea. Like something like that is dedicated time to put aside and say, okay, I need to think about this, not just in terms of what do I need to fix or solve right this second, but what long term do I need to do to stay competitive. Things like loyalty programs are very big right now for restaurants, getting those on set up and done. And the thing is, for a lot of restaurant owners, I think these are all things that they know in the back of their mind that they should be doing. It's just like when do I do it? When do I have time to deal with that? So that's where someone like a local marketing agency can come out and really help these restaurants, develop that strategy and implement it on their behalf.
Yeah. Do you feel like that space is growing a bit? Are you seeing more kind of agencies getting familiar and involved in the culinary businesses in particular and helping them more with the kind of the marketing, sales, business side in the digital, the digital landscape that we're in?
Yeah, I see it growing, not as quickly as I would like it. Traditionally, agencies do not like working with restaurants. And the reason why is pretty self-evident when you realize how agencies work. So a marketing agency that, let's say, focuses on doing Google ads or Facebook ads, they're looking at what kind of return can I get this business for my ads. So if a marketing agency gets let's say a roofing client that does $10,000 roofs, if they get that roofing client 2 more customers a month, that's an extra 20 grand in the roofing company's pocket. It makes it really easy to justify the marketing agency cost, right? If you get a restaurant 2 more customers a month, first off, how do you know where those customers came from, right? Because it's not like a lead that you're then going to call. Second off, 2 more customers a month is not going to move the needle for that restaurant. So it's very difficult in the past for traditional marketing agencies to figure out how to work with these restaurants, smaller restaurants, in the best way. So the best way that I found for them to do that is to work with tools. So restaurants will buy tools. Online ordering is a tool. Loyalty programs are a tool. Point of sale systems are a tool. And if you can provide the support provide the tools and then provide the support behind those tools to make them work, I think that's the best position for marketing agencies to be in to work with restaurants.
Gotcha. I love that. I agree with that sentiment totally. I think as you're explaining, it is a huge issue that a lot of times these restaurant owners, particularly the small ones, I'm sure, the ones that are maybe, $2 million or less, kind of these small culinary businesses, one location, maybe 2 or 3 locations, 20 to 40 employees. It's like, are you seeing that the business owners are probably still pretty involved in the day to day, and they're like needing to be on site, with their hands in there, and then just trying to figure out like, when do I give this time? When do I give
Right.
this time to this digital
Absolutely.
marketing stuff?
Absolutely. And it's the business owner, it's the restaurant owners that can get past that hurdle, they can get through that glass ceiling to and figure that stuff out while keeping the restaurant operating. They're the ones that break through and are able to open up multiple locations or multiple brands and put real systems and processes in place to grow in the future. Which not everyone wants that, right? Like there are people who are just fine with operating one restaurant profitably and happy, which is great. But if you want to get that next level, you absolutely have to find a way to put some of this stuff in place. And it's kind of that entrepreneurial challenge that any business owner goes through at some point, where you get to the point to where you're not big enough to have the time and money to pay people to do certain things, but you have to do it. You have to figure out and get to that next level. Um, and that's where you find a lot of people stall out in the restaurant business.
Yeah. What do you think it is? What do you think kind of prevents? What do you think is the number one thing that's preventing these business owners from giving it the time? Like you mentioned earlier, I think we know that they know they should be doing some of these things, but what do you think's the thing that's kind of like blocking them or keeping them from taking those steps into the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, like most things, it's going to be a combination of the things, right? One is the fear of the unknown, and it's hey, I'm not a marketing expert. I don't know anything about this. If I contact the agency to help me, they're going to take advantage of me. If I try to do it on my own, I'm going to fail. And they get kind of in this spiral, and then it's that human nature to procrastinate, right? Well, I'll deal with that after the first, or okay, well, I'll do that after the busy season, or whatever it is, or well, when that time comes, well, my one of my cooks just quit. Now I have to focus on hiring a cook, and it's so easy to just keep it kicking it down the road instead of tackling that head on. And especially when it's something you're not confident in your own knowledge or ability in, it can be pretty intimidating.
This episode of Built for Chefs is powered by GetSous.com, the digital sous chef for your business. Whether it's streamlining bookings, managing contacts, or professionally invoicing, Sous is built to support culinary businesses on their path to growth. Start your free trial today by visiting GetSous.com. That's GetSous.com, and experience the future of culinary business management. Have you found a way to help with that at all? I mean, it sounds like from experience, maybe just obviously in the conversations that you've had with these business owners, having this agency of your own, working with ActiveMenus. Like, is there something that you feel helps to kind of break through that barrier a bit and get them, realizing and taking some of those steps? Anything that seems to be
Yeah,
helpful?
absolutely. Yeah, the only way to overcome emotion, which fear, apprehension, whatever you want to call that emotion, is with logic, right? Like that's the only tool you have to battle that. And so you come in and you lay it out for them. You lay out a plan, and you tell them step by step, how that's going to work and why it's beneficial to them and why it's necessary to put that plan into action. And then you walk down that path with them and make sure you stay in communication and doing as much of it with them as you can instead of for them, believe it or not, I think really helps because you get that buy-in from them as well. And then they start seeing results, right? And the faster you can give them that first result, the better they're going to feel about it. And then as they see more and more results, their resolve will increase, and then they'll start liking it. And then they'll say, well, what's next? What are we going to do next? We got to do something, and then they'll get excited about it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's laying out the framework logically and then walking with them down that path and letting them see the results for themselves.
Yeah, I can see that. Like what you're explaining is, it's almost like, unfortunately, they don't. Some business owners, they just don't know enough to ask the right kind of questions towards these agencies and marketing individuals, in order to make them feel confident. So, like you said, they're so hesitant and they don't know the stuff, so they have that fear, right?
Mhm.
And so they don't want to look foolish, or they don't want to, like you said, get played,
Mhm.
basically, right? And it's because they don't know what to ask and what to look for. We got to do better, right? Like providing them the information, helping to educate the space, helping these business owners feel more confident in the tools and not being taken advantage of. So let me ask you this about like active campaigns, or really anything that you've been doing in this space, helping with these business owners through the ventures that you've started, that you're helping them with. What's one thing that you feel like you've been most proud of in terms of helping?
Well, for sure, it was getting having the delivery business and getting through the pandemic. So I lived in a mountain in the mountains of North Georgia, large retired population who took COVID very, very seriously. Right, they were not coming out of their homes. So we were in a situation at the beginning of the pandemic where restaurants were closed. I would walk into a restaurant and it would literally be the owner and the head chef sitting at a table, and they were the only ones in there with their heads down, just like, what are we gonna do, right? And I was able to get them a solution to get some orders coming in the door and put their servers to work as drivers, right? Because servers were out of business. We tend to overlook servers, which I think is a mistake because they were highly impacted by the pandemic, right? So I was able to put them to work as drivers. So I was able to get the kitchen cooking food again, which was extremely important at that time. And I was able to help get the food to the customers who were a lot of times were stuck at home. We had people from out of town who were calling in orders for their elderly parents and grandparents. And I remember coming out of the pandemic, one restaurant owner in particular, she came up to me, gave me a big hug, and said, "Brian, we wouldn't have made it if it weren't for you." And like for sure, that was my proudest moment. And now I'm proud to be on the other side of it, where I'm not charging these owners 20 or 30% like DoorDash is, but able to actually help them even more by setting up their direct online ordering for just a flat fee.
Oh, that's got to be good. That's got to be such a good feeling to like go through that. And yeah, the pandemic really did a number on the culinary industry. Like amongst all the industries, I think the culinary industry was one of the hardest hit. Now, I won't obviously don't want to position it and kind of position it against other industries. Like we all, there was an impact that went throughout everywhere. But the
Mhm.
culinary industry relies on people and relationship and being together and in close quarters together. It has to do with food safety, and there's all these things to consider. So the fact that you were able to help them to see a vision and pivot and adjust and maintain, and it sounds like you did a pretty good job, like leading to keep the team together, like reusing the servers as drivers. Like it, looking back, I'm sure it probably seems like, well, yeah, it seems like an obvious thing, but in the moment, fear can take hold of a business owner going, oh my God, like you said, they're sitting there hanging their heads going, what are we going to do?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, it was
everything's
kind of
falling
a
apart.
that entire business, especially at the beginning, was just kind of a all in together type thing. It's like, okay, we're gonna survive or we're gonna die together. And so the restaurants promoted us very, very heavily. The customers promoted us to each other very heavily, and we all just came together. And it really was it was hard to see it then, but looking back for sure, it really was a magical combination that I think helped a lot of people.
That's great. That is so great. So let's go back to a little bit about like active menus. Anything that you can share that you guys are doing today that you guys are like excited about, that you're looking forward to. Anything that you want to share that can help restaurants, anyone in the local area that might be listening that they go, oh, you know what, maybe I should reach out to these guys. Maybe I should check out what ActiveMenus is about. Like, what can you tell us?
Yeah, for sure. So we have the online ordering, of course. We have the custom mobile apps for restaurants, which are very important. But we also have one product that we have that I think is really important is we have um, order taking over the phone. So we'll have it so the restaurant can put, press one to order delivery or takeout. That call will be forwarded to us where we will answer as if we are the restaurant. So if they're calling Bob's Burgers, we'll answer, thank you for calling Bob's Burgers. How can we start your order? And we will actually take that order for them. The reason that's important is because if you've ever been in a restaurant where the phone's just ringing off the hook and no one can answer it, that can be an issue, right? Like they're losing out on orders, or they're having to staff enough people where that doesn't happen, which costs them money. So by having us there to answer those phone calls, it's really helped a lot of restaurants out. We onboarded one restaurant that was paying a different company over $5,000 a month for just that service, just to have an outside company answering their phones. And we were just able to do it for a per order fee, which they love. But coming down the track, we have the AI phone answering. We have a demo available now. I think that we'll start taking orders through that AI system probably in January. So we're very, very excited about that. We're also building out, this is kind of low tech, but we're building out our print resources for restaurants. And so I'll just talk on that just briefly. So DoorDash and Uber Eats and other third-party order aggregators like that you're paying the 20 to 30% to. That's very expensive if you're paying 20 to 30% every time someone orders. But if you pay that 20 to 30% the first time someone orders, and then you turn them into your own customer, and you're not paying the 20 to 30% anymore, that's very profitable long term. So what we're doing is we're doing things like getting table tents together for restaurants with QR codes so that people can download the app and get the online order link. We're doing flyers that restaurants can put into the takeout bags when someone does order DoorDash, Uber Eats, or one of the other third parties, so that they can get a coupon for $5 off the first time they order from the restaurant directly. So what you end up doing is you turn these third-party platforms into client acquisition channels, and then you convert them to being your own customers. And that is a very powerful combination.
Yes, it is. Yeah, that is definitely, and that's a shared sentiment that I've had several conversations around that. It's going from a transactional based thing into lifelong returning customers, right? And having that all together, that is super, super important. And I love that you guys are doing that. And I'll just hit on this real quick that I think is so important that is maintained in using those platforms is that unfortunately there are other ones out there, particularly for the personal chef business, I would say, that I have more familiarity with, but is that these platforms, they box you in. They restrict you from having access to any of that kind of data because they're so worried about maintaining their profits and their margins that they put up all these blockades in order to prevent some of these personal chefs from having any direct contact with clients, being able to contact them independently or separately, or creating them as their own customers, and they want to keep them to themselves.
Sure.
And I think what you guys are doing is really smart, obviously, that you're helping to the business by, again, turning those transactions into lifelong customers that they can actually have a relationship with, and the customer, because the customers don't know, they're dealing with the app, but whatever experience they have there in their minds could be associated with the restaurant itself. And so the restaurant has to, I'm sure, be careful of, well, what's the experience? What's the full kind of journey for our potential customers in working with these apps, then getting to us, getting the drivers, things like that. It's like everyone kind of representing that restaurant and something that they feel like they sometimes don't control. And you guys are solving for that, which is huge.
Yeah, and the other part is the customer data, right? Because once the customer orders from the restaurant directly, now the restaurant has the customer data, which they're able to use to remarket to that customer and build that relationship, right? convince them to come in and dine in. So, if you have, let's say you have a Mexican restaurant and you have a Cinco de Mayo party coming up, right? Well, you can now send an email out to all the customers that have ordered from you directly, this database of emails that you have, and you send an email out and say, hey, join us for our Cinco de Mayo celebration this Monday at 5 or wherever it happens to be. And so you're able to drive that traffic in store as well, which is just huge. In any other industry, email marketing is king. Like, yeah, ask anybody in marketing. Like, email marketing is king. Having that email list is king. And it's the cheapest and best form to get your message out to people, especially people who have already interacted with you. And online ordering on your own website or app is the only way to get that with restaurants or loyalty programs, right? Loyalty programs can do it too. But other than that, like, that's it. That's the only way you're getting that information, getting that ability to get your message out to them that way.
Yeah, that's interesting. How well do you think most restaurants do with that data part of it and the email marketing part of it? Like, where
There are
do they
some that
fall?
do very, very well. There are some that don't do it at all, of course, and some that even if you gave them their email, they wouldn't know what to do with it, right? So it's definitely a mix. But I would say the ones who get it really get it and do really well with it. And I always tell smaller local restaurants, like, look at what the big guys are doing, because they're not doing it for no reason, right? Big guys, they send out marketing emails. Why do they do that? It's because they work, right? Big guys have loyalty programs. Why do they do that? To get the information, um, so that they can send out the emails. So,
Right.
yeah, I think it's important.
Yeah, I wonder if sometimes we get wrapped up in our minds around, like, for instance, with the loyalty program, as a business owner, we think about what's the immediate return I can get on this. But what the big guys are doing, or honestly, they're playing the longer game. And they go, it's not just about what I can get out of this right now in this transaction, but also capturing the data, because then they own the list. And like you said, email marketing is king. They own that list, and they're able to continually market at such a low cost, which is super important. So on that note, in terms of restaurants, let's just say that, someone listening in right now owns a restaurant, or even any kind of food business, food truck, caterer, personal chef, doesn't matter. What would be like your one big piece of advice for someone who's like, yeah, I kind of got a little bit of a list going, or I've got a list, I don't know what to do with it. Like, in order for them to, create better outcomes, what would be your biggest piece of advice for them starting out with doing a list and having a list?
Yeah. So first, you want to be able to pull as many people into that list as possible, and there's a few ways to do that. You have the online ordering, which is huge. You have your loyalty programs. There are things called gated Wi-Fi, which I'm not a real big fan of, but it has worked really well for some people. It's basically put in your email address and you can access our free Wi-Fi type of deal, like you see at
Oh, okay.
malls and airports and
Yep.
stuff. You have newsletters, which are hit or miss with restaurants, I think. They work best if you're giving away something on there every so often on the newsletter, like a free appetizer of the month or something for people who are on our newsletter list. So you start building that list, and then once you have the list, you're going to want to decide, okay, well, I'm going to send out one regular touch point, so you have to decide what frequency you're going to send them out, right? And then two, you want specialty touch points. So specialty touch points would be, Valentine's Day coming up, Mother's Day coming up, Thanksgiving, whatever, Cinco de Mayo, what have you. So you want to set those up. Three, birthdays are very important, right? Every restaurant does a birthday special. Every large restaurant does a birthday special. You want to be one of those in their inbox when they get that. And so you want to set up on some sort of system that's going to automate this, because it's going to be too much to manage just kind of on your own, sending out emails from your Gmail or what have you. So you want some sort of system, MailChimp, Go High Level, some sort of system that's going to manage the sending out of these emails. And then you want to do a little bit of research on how to structure those emails to get the best conversion rate or the best interaction with those emails. But one thing to keep in mind is people are, especially diners, are very, very impulsive. I know my wife and I are. are. If we don't have supper planned that night and we get an email for 10% off our local pizza place, like pizza sounds good, as good as anything else, let's do it, right?
Yeah.
Like people are very, very impulsive. You want to be there touching with those touch points to encourage that. So
Yeah, that's 100%. I don't know how many times that I've had that. Um, for us, it's the indecisiveness, and then we end up, my wife and I, and with the kids, we end up just going back to the places that we're used to going, and we always do this thing where we drive around and, we're like, oh yeah, that place, we should write that down. We should make sure that we go there next time we're thinking about going out. And then that time occurs and our minds just go blank. And so
right.
then we're just like, well, what's convenient? What's easy? And it all has to do with that familiarity. Well, how do you breed familiarity? Well, you got to stay in front of them. You got to keep in front of them. You got to get them in, have that good experience. And for us, it would be that indecisiveness of like, well, where do we want to go? And yeah, if we got that message, oh yeah, I just got that email. And that's really important. But I'll say this, and I know this is the case, and we talked about this, is that the business owners running a restaurant, there's so many things that you have to do and think about constantly, and then to try to execute on technology that you might not feel confident with, how to set up an email list, how to do newsletters, what frequency, how to structure it. It can sometimes feel overwhelming. So what I'd like to ask is, if someone here is listening and they go, I know I need to do this, but I know that I could use the help. How would someone be able to get in touch with you? What's the best way for them to interact with you in order to figure out whether or not there could possibly be a fit there, work with you, get some help, and make things happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can just send an email to Brian with an I, Brian at activemenus.com. Happy to chat with them, set up some time to talk, whether they want to sign up for Active Menus or want suggestions on a good loyalty program to use. We don't do loyalty programs at Active Menus, by the way. So I keep talking about loyalty programs. It's not even something we offer. We do have a rewards program with the online ordering, but as far as in-store loyalty programs, we don't do that. But I can certainly point people in the right direction for that. But yeah, just happy to chit chat and point folks in the right direction as best I can.
Wonderful. Well, you guys heard it here. If you are a restaurant owner, you're looking for just that extra help to implement some key strategies, some great tools, things that will help impact the bottom line of your business and make a long-term change and shift that honestly could either save your business if you're, quite frankly, hanging your head right now and you're just wondering, what the hell am I going to do, for tomorrow and next week? There are people out here who are there to help. There are people like Brian, myself, Christopher Solis, who's on our previous episode. Like, there are great individuals out here that can help guide you and steer you in the right direction. And then there are great tools where Brian's working with ActiveMenus, and ActiveMenus is there to help solve some of these really important issues, to help you save money and put money back in your pocket from what you might be spending now in high service fees for delivery apps. And they can set something up really wonderful for you. So, Brian, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing all of your expertise. There's so much else that I think that we might have to have another conversation just to dive into some other things as well, because I see what's out there. So I'm going to put all of Brian's links into the captions of this podcast episode, and feel free to connect with Brian and connect with ActiveMenus and just see what they're up to and see if that's something that could help you. But other than that, Brian, thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you.
Wonderful
I appreciate you having
conversation.
me on. Yeah, it's been great.
Awesome. Appreciate it. And that'll be all. So you guys have a blessed rest of your day, and thank you for tuning in. Hey, thanks for tuning into the show Built for Chefs. Do you feel like you need to stay ahead of the curve? Then keep up on the latest tech, tools, and strategies in the culinary industry by subscribing to this podcast and join the conversation, because building a thriving food business takes more than just skill. It takes innovation and vision.